Hello! The first time I saw him, he was standing in front of the mailboxes with a confused look on his face and a pit bull tugging at a leash. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I always do laundry on Wednesdays, and I was carrying a basket full of damp clothes back to my unit when he turned and smiled like he knew me. "Hey," he said, totally casual, like we were already friends. "Do you know how these mailboxes work?" I think I locked myself out of mine already. I wasn't in the mood for small talk. My shirt was sticking to my back, my socks were wet, and his dog was sniffing my knee with way too much enthusiasm. But I paused. Because he was, well, cute. In that very West Coast way. Tan skin, floppy hair, a little stubble, white tank top, athletic shorts. Probably a surfer in a past life. And his voice had this relaxed rasp to it that made everything sound like a joke you wanted to be in on. "You need your key," I said, balancing the laundry basket on one hip. "And if you lost it, talk to Darla, Unit 1A. She's the manager." He nodded, grinning. "Cool. I'm Max, by the way. Just moved into 3F. I didn't mean to stare, but his dog sat down obediently and looked up at him like he was the best person on earth. And I wasn't far behind. "Leo," I said after a beat. 3D. We shook hands. His grip was warm, dry, confident. My fingers tingled longer than I wanted to admit. For the next few days, I saw him everywhere. In the laundry room folding t-shirts, on the stairs with headphones in, walking his dog down the sidewalk at night. And every time, he smiled, like it was just for me. At first, I assumed it meant nothing. Friendly guy, new building, whatever. But then came the night with the thunderstorm. My power went out around 9 p.m. I was mid-binge of some true crime documentary, and the sudden silence left me sitting in the dark with half a sandwich and a rapidly dying phone. I just started lighting candles when there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there he was, Max, barefoot, holding a flashlight and wearing the same tank top from earlier, now slightly damp from rain. "Hey," he said, breathless like he jogged down the hall. "You lose power too?" "Yeah," I said. "Fun surprise." He smiled. "I've got a couple backup batteries and a bottle of whiskey if you want to ride it out with me. No pressure." I blinked. My brain caught up about 5 seconds too late. "You're inviting me over?" He shrugged, like it was no big deal. "Unless you've got something better than whiskey and a dog named Pablo." Pablo poked his head out from behind him, tail wagging. I hesitated only long enough to grab my phone and a hoodie. Max's apartment smelled faintly of eucalyptus and laundry detergent. Clean, a little earthy, like someone who actually cared about their living space. Pablo, his pit bull, trotted ahead of me, curling up immediately on a giant dog bed in the corner. Max gestured toward the couch. "Make yourself at home." "You want ice? Or just straight up?" he asked, already reaching for 2 glasses. "Straight's fine," I said, sitting down and glancing around. The place wasn't cluttered, but it had signs of life. Sneakers by the door, a skateboard leaning against the bookshelf, a hoodie draped over a chair, and a photo of him and a guy on the beach. His brother, maybe? Or a friend? I didn't ask. Max handed me a glass and sat at the other end of the couch, pulling one leg up casually. The storm outside cracked through the silence, lightning flickering against the windows. "So," he said, clinking his glass to mine, "to being neighbors. Cheers," I replied, trying to ignore the way my heart skipped at the proximity. We drank. The whiskey was smoother than I expected, and it burned just enough to feel it. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a moment, turning slightly toward me. I nodded. "Are you seeing anyone?" The question was casual, almost careless, but his eyes didn't match that energy. They were focused, searching, serious. I blinked. "No." He nodded slowly. "Cool, just asking, for no reason." I let out a quiet laugh. "Right. No reason." The silence stretched again, but it wasn't awkward. If anything, it was loaded. A pause thick, with something neither of us wanted to name yet. "Pablo likes you," Max said, gesturing toward his dog who was now snoring softly. "I like him too." I think he can tell, Max said. And then there was this long look. Not a stare, but something more. Curious. Intent. The lights flickered back on, suddenly and violently, breaking the tension like a slap. Max glanced up at the ceiling. Well, guess that's that. But I didn't move. Neither did he. Unless, he added, his voice softer now, you're not in a rush to leave. I shook my head. Not really. Good, he said, his gaze lingering. Stay a while. We can finish the bottle, or, he paused, we can talk. I set my glass down. About what? Max shrugged, but it wasn't a careless shrug. It was careful, measured. About the look you gave me the first time we met, he said quietly. About the way you're looking at me now. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I wasn't used to people like him. People who saw through me that easily. I don't know what you're talking about, I said finally, half laughing. Max smiled, leaned in just slightly. Then let's pretend you do. My heart thundered in my chest, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to run from it. I didn't move at first. Neither did he. The air between us felt tight, electric, like the seconds before lightning splits the sky. I could feel it in my chest. The pull, the hesitation, the crash waiting to happen. Max just watched me. Not pushing, just waiting. His eyes weren't teasing anymore. There was something patient in them. Something real. So I did the smallest thing. I reached out and touched his hand where it rested on the couch cushion. He didn't flinch. His fingers shifted slightly, then slowly wrapped around mine like it was the most normal thing in the world. I wasn't sure, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. About you, if this was just you being friendly. He shook his head, just once. I don't invite every neighbor over during a blackout, and I don't sit like this for just anyone. There was a faint smile on his lips, but it was soft. Honest. I nodded, still staring at our hands. I didn't think you were gay. I didn't think I was either. Not completely anyway. He tilted his head. But then I met you, and now I think about things differently. That sentence should have made me spiral. Instead, it settled me. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I think about you too, I admitted. Max smiled wider. Not smug, just relieved. That's good, because I've been trying to figure out how to bring this up without sounding like a creep. You're doing fine, I said, thumb brushing against his knuckle. Kind of crushing it, actually. He chuckled, and something in me unclenched. That laugh, paired with the weight of his hand in mine, grounded me. The storm outside still raged, but in here, everything had gone quiet. So what happens now? I asked. He leaned back, pulling me gently with him until we were sitting shoulder to shoulder. I don't know, he said, but I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. Me either. Max turned to face me, his eyes searching mine. Then, carefully, like he was asking a question with his body instead of his voice, he leaned in. His lips stopped just short of mine, giving me a chance to back away. I didn't. I closed the distance. The kiss was tentative at first, almost like we were both afraid it might not feel right. But it did. It felt better than anything had in a long time. His lips were warm, his hand finding the side of my neck, thumb brushing just under my jaw. And when we finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. That's not nothing, he whispered. No, I agreed. It's really not. We didn't say much after that. He poured us a little more whiskey, and we sat there, knees touching, hands intertwined, the tension replaced by something quieter, something that felt like the beginning of something real. I ended up staying the night, not in the way people usually mean when they say that. We didn't hook up, and we didn't try to make it more than what it was. It was just sleep, tangled in limbs and warm breaths. The dog curled at our feet, the occasional flicker of leftover lightning sneaking through the blinds. And I woke up feeling different, not in a world is new kind of way, but more like the weight I'd been carrying, the wondering, the questions, the tension, had quietly lifted itself off my chest sometime during the night. Max was already awake, lying on his side, watching me like I was part of some dream he wasn't quite ready to let go of. "Hey," he said, voice scratchy from sleep. "Hey," I replied, blinking the blur from my eyes. We stayed like that for a minute, just looking at each other. His hair was sticking up at weird angles, and I was sure I had creases on my cheek from the couch pillow, but neither of us seemed to care. "You always make out with your neighbors and crash on their couch?" I asked. He smirked. "Only the really good-looking ones." I rolled my eyes, but I didn't pull away when he reached out and traced his thumb gently along my jaw. "You snore," he added, like it was a revelation. "Lies," I said. "Like a chainsaw," he said, deadpan. I reached for the pillow and swatted him with it. He laughed, grabbing my wrist to stop me, and in that split second, our bodies close again, that familiar buzz crawling up my spine. I realized we were still doing it. Whatever this was. Still inside the bubble. "Coffee?" he asked, loosening his grip on my wrist but not moving away. I nodded. "Coffee." We shuffled to the kitchen, both of us barefoot and a little dazed. He moved easily, opening cabinets and pulling down mismatched mugs. One said "Number 1 Dad," which made me raise an eyebrow. "Thrift store," he said, grinning. "I promise I don't have secret children." I laughed, leaning against the counter. The dog patted in and flopped down with a dramatic sigh, as if he was already over our morning routine. We didn't talk much while the coffee brewed, but it wasn't awkward. It was quiet in that comfortable way where you don't have to fill the silence just because it's there. When he handed me a mug, our fingers brushed again. And this time, there was no flinch, no pullback, just warmth. "So," Max said, sitting across from me at the tiny kitchen table. "Now what?" I sipped my coffee, studying him. The way he waited for my answer, not rushing, not joking it off, just honest, curious. "I guess we figure that out," I said. "Together, if you want." He gave a small nod. "Yeah, I want." Outside, the city was waking up, cars humming, dogs barking, people moving. But inside, things still felt still. Like we had time, like we'd earned a slow start. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. We didn't call it a date. Not at first. A few days after the storm, Max texted me while I was on my lunch break. "You like tacos?" I replied. "Is that a serious question?" He answered, "Good. Meet me outside at 6. Trust me." I almost said no. Not because I didn't want to go, but because part of me was still bracing for the shift, waiting for him to pull away, to call it a phase or a mistake. But Max wasn't like that. He never once made me feel like this was temporary. So I said yes. At 6 p.m. sharp, he pulled up in a beat-up silver Toyota pickup, dog already in the back seat with his tongue hanging out like it was the best day of his life. Max leaned across the passenger seat and opened the door for me, grinning. "Hop in, city boy." The place he took me to wasn't even a real restaurant. It was a taco truck parked behind a gas station, the kind of spot that didn't take cards and had 3 things on the menu, but every one of them slapped. We sat at a picnic table under a string of mismatched bulbs, paper napkins flying in the wind, our food balanced on flimsy plastic trays. "This is the most Portland thing I've ever experienced," I said between bites. Max smirked, licking hot sauce from his thumb. "Told you to trust me." He watched me for a beat, then added, "You look good tonight, by the way." I swallowed, surprised by how casually he said it, like we were already a thing, and compliments were just part of the deal. "Thanks," I said, feeling my ears go a little warm. "You don't look so bad yourself." He raised an eyebrow. "Just not so bad?" Wow, brutal. "I'm keeping you humble." He laughed, and I felt that buzz again, like something between us was clicking into place without either of us having to try too hard. We talked about dumb stuff, worst dates, favorite movies, which season of The Office sucked the most. He told me about his childhood in Bend, about his dad who taught him how to fish but couldn't cook worth a damn. I told him about my last roommate, the one who stole my plants during a breakup. It was easy. Stupidly easy. On the drive back, Pablo curled up in the back seat. Max reached over and rested his hand on my thigh. Not in a suggestive way, just a simple, solid connection. I looked down at his fingers, then up at him. He kept his eyes on the road but said, "This doesn't feel like a fluke, right?" "No," I said. "It really doesn't." We pulled into our building's parking lot, and neither of us made a move to get out of the car. The windows fogged slightly from our breath. The city outside buzzed, but in that truck things felt hushed again. "Want to come up?" he asked. I looked at him, then smiled. "Yeah, I do." Walking into his apartment felt different this time. Before, it was casual, neighbors hanging out, storm-induced sleepovers. But this time, it was intentional. He unlocked the door, let me in first, and then followed behind slowly, like he knew this moment meant something, and he wasn't going to rush it. Pablo plopped onto his dog bed like clockwork, and Max turned on the lamp beside the couch, casting everything in that soft amber glow that made the place feel warmer than it already was. I stood there for a second, awkward in the doorway, suddenly unsure what to do with my hands. "You good?" he asked, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. "Yeah," I said. "I just wasn't expecting this to feel so normal," he offered. "Yeah," I admitted. He nodded and walked over, gently tugging on the sleeve of my hoodie until I followed him to the couch. We sat close again, not touching, not yet. There was something quietly sacred about the pause, like we were both aware of how easy it would be to mess this up, and neither of us wanted to do that. Max was the first to move. He leaned in and kissed me again, just a press of lips, soft and unhurried, the kind of kiss that says, "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." This time, though, we didn't stop. He deepened the kiss, his hand moving to the side of my neck. I shifted closer, knees brushing, hips aligned, and suddenly the space between us wasn't enough. Still, it wasn't rushed. It was careful, thoughtful. The way his hand rested on my thigh. The way he waited for me to nod before guiding me onto the couch beneath him. The way he asked, quietly, "Is this okay?" more than once. And when it finally happened, when all the tension of the last week unraveled in the shape of his mouth on mine, his hands on my waist, his body pressed to mine, it wasn't fireworks or heat or chaos. It was grounding. I felt every breath, every heartbeat, every inch of skin, like it was all brand new, and also like I'd been waiting for it without knowing. When we were finally still, wrapped around each other in the half-light, Max exhaled against my temple. "That wasn't nothing," he murmured. "No," I whispered back. "Definitely not." We didn't talk much after that. He handed me a hoodie that smelled like him. I pulled it on and curled into his side. His fingers traced circles on my back absent-mindedly, like his body was still trying to memorize mine. "Stay?" he asked. I nodded. And that night, we slept wrapped around each other. No weirdness, no regrets, just quiet breathing, a dog's soft snore, and the feeling of something new beginning. The next morning, I woke up before he did. His arm was draped over my waist, his face buried in the back of my shoulder. Pablo was curled up at the foot of the bed, twitching in some dream. And for a few long minutes, I just lay there, staring at the faint cracks in the ceiling, realizing how okay everything felt. Not perfect, not magical, just okay in a way I hadn't felt in years. Like I didn't need to brace for something bad, like I wasn't going to be asked to leave. Max stirred eventually, making a quiet hum and nuzzling closer, half asleep and unaware of how tightly he was holding me. I turned slightly, enough to glance back at him. "Morning," he blinked slowly, then smiled. "Damn, you're still here." "You sound surprised," he chuckled. "Little bit. Thought maybe you'd wake up and remember you have better options." I rolled my eyes. "You realize you're literally still clinging to me, right?" He looked down at his arm, then shrugged and kissed my shoulder. Yeah. I noticed. We got up late, made coffee in our boxers. I wore his hoodie again, and he didn't comment, just smiled like it made sense. The whole day moved like that, quiet, steady, warm, no expectations. Just us figuring it out, one beat at a time. He walked me back to my apartment sometime after lunch. We stood at my door for a second, unsure of how to end something that didn't really feel like it needed to end. "I'm not gonna pretend I know what this is," I said, fingers hooked in the hem of his shirt. Max leaned forward, pressed his forehead to mine. "Me neither, but I want to find out." I nodded, and that was it. We didn't suddenly start calling each other boyfriends. We didn't make some big announcement. But things shifted. Little things. He started leaving his hoodie on my chair. I bought treats for Pablo. He learned how I liked my coffee. I started to recognize the way his voice dipped when he was tired but pretending not to be. And slowly, I realized that somewhere between late-night music complaints and whiskey during a blackout, Max had become the person I texted first. The person I missed when he wasn't around. The person who made space for me without making me feel like I owed him something in return. One night, a couple weeks in, we were lying on his couch. Feet tangled, TV on but ignored, and he turned to me, serious. "Can I ask something?" "Sure." "What did you think was going to happen that first night? When you came over during the blackout?" I thought about it for a second. I thought I was just coming over for a drink. "And now?" I turned to face him. "Now I think I found the one guy who actually makes me want to stay." Max didn't say anything right away. He just pulled me in closer, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Good, because I don't want you going anywhere." And I didn't. It's weird, the way life shifts when you let someone all the way in. Not in the dramatic movie montage kind of way, just slowly, quietly. The way you start leaving an extra toothbrush on the sink. The way your routines adjust without ever being officially discussed. I stopped flinching when he reached for my hand in public. He started texting me things like, "Grab almond milk without preface," as if I was part of his grocery logic now. We spent more nights together than apart. At some point, without either of us saying it, my apartment became the one with the plants, and his became home. One night in late October, we were walking Pablo along the Riverwalk. The city was just cold enough to need jackets, and he'd brought me one of his, a navy one that smelled like his cologne and always made me feel more solid in the world. "You ever think about how we got here?" I asked, watching our breath cloud the air. Max glanced at me, all the time, like it could have been anyone living next door. "But it wasn't," he said, bumping my shoulder gently. "It was you." I smiled, hands in my pockets. "You're weirdly good at saying the right thing." "I'm a huge sap," he said, grinning. "You're just lucky you caught me before I started using pickup lines on the new guy moving in next month." I stopped walking. "Wait, someone's moving in?" He laughed. "No, just wanted to see your face." I shook my head, but I couldn't stop smiling. The kind of smile that felt like it came from somewhere deeper than my mouth, somewhere in my chest. Later that night, we lay in bed, me with my head on his chest, him tracing lazy lines on my back. I felt that quiet stillness again, the one that had first settled in his apartment during the blackout. But now it felt like something permanent, like home. "You think this is real?" I asked softly. Max didn't even pause. "Yeah, I really do. And the thing is, so did I. Not because it was perfect, not because it had been easy, but because it was grounded in the small, real stuff. The way he made space for me, the way I let him in, the way we kept choosing each other even when things were uncertain." He kissed the top of my head and whispered, "I know you're not going anywhere, but just in case, I'm not letting go." And he didn't. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.